Comprehensive legislation is now likely not to be debated when the Senate returns from the August recess. There will be a few voices who say, oh, there's still a chance that it will be taken up, but we have to have a realistic view. They have failed. They have failed badly. And the possibility for a robust debate later this year is greatly diminished. And the possibility of a debate after the midterm elections in a lame duck congressional session is also a very slim possibility indeed. And so I have to tell you in all candor and honesty that this battle has not been successful, and it's pretty much over for this year. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I want to be realistic because we need to redouble our efforts for the battle that lies ahead. It's not over. It may be over in this session of Congress, and who knows how these elections will turn out. But the battle is not over, and we simply have no choice but to win this battle. Even while we are so painfully and profoundly aware of the crisis in which we find ourselves, even as we recognize the common thread linking the climate crisis and the economic crisis and our national security challenges, the Senate has still failed us. The United States government as a whole has failed us. The House of Representatives did its job, in large part because of your efforts, and the American people as a whole still, by a margin of 60% and more, say they support passing legislation. But the very powerful special interests that make up the oil and coal and gas and utility sectors, not every company, let's add that there are many businesses, including some in that sector, that understand what the stakes are and what needs to be done. But the powerful special interests that want to continue to dump their global warming pollution into the global atmosphere freely and unchecked, as if it's an open sewer, have, for the time being, won this battle. But they have not won the larger struggle. One lesson of what has just happened is we have to recognize clearly that we have a serious problem in Washington, D.C. Although we have managed to make progress on health care and financial reform and some other measures, on the whole, our government is not working as our founders intended it to. The special interests and their allies in the Congress have been fighting vigorously every single day to stop progress. And on the most important issue that we face, the survival of human civilization as we know it, they are, for the time being, able to stop progress. Armed with unprecedented amounts of funding and a sophisticated, cynical, and coordinated campaign designed to stop any effort to reduce carbon pollution and global warming pollution. The special interests aligned on the other side have spent hundreds of millions of dollars this year alone just on lobbying, not to mention their large public relations, the deceptive campaign. They attacked the science, they attacked the scientists. And even though the attacks were proven to be false, were unsupported, they did damage and cast doubt. They used very harsh and cynical political rhetoric and worked hard to position the protection of climate and the protection of our future as a task that many elected officials were simply too scared to act on in a responsible way. They spread information about the costs of inaction to American families and businesses. They spread untruths that during a time of economic recession, rather than solving this crisis and creating millions of jobs in the process, they argued that it would be to our economic disadvantage. They're wrong. But we have to acknowledge that we have to do better. We have to fight harder. We have to win this struggle. So how do we move ahead? How can we? Well, we have an ally on our side, reality. And millions more people all the time are recognizing what's going on. This year, just in the first 7 months of this year, 17 nations have set all-time extreme heat records. This past July was the 6th straight record warm month in the tropical Atlantic. The 6 months comprised of January to June were the hottest 6 months comprised of January to June in the history of recorded measurements. Look at what's happening in Russia right now. The chief meteorologist and climate expert in Russia said, and I quote, "We have an archive of abnormal weather situations stretching over 1,000 years. It is now possible to say there has been nothing similar to this on the territory of Russia during at least the last 1,000 years." Russian leaders are starting to understand what is at stake. The president of Russia, Medvedev, said, and I quote, "What is happening now in our central regions is evidence of this global climate change, because we have never in our history faced such weather conditions in the past. We're seeing extreme weather events that break all records in many places around the world. In my home city, where I'm located right now, Nashville, Tennessee, thousands of my neighbors lost their homes a few months ago to flooding, and they had no flood insurance, because when they bought and built their homes, they were told, "Oh, you don't need flood insurance. You live outside the floodplain. There's never been a flood here." But what occurred was what the scientists and the Army Corps of Engineers described as a once-in-a-thousand-year rainfall. So the floodplains, as they used to be measured, are no longer relevant to the future, because we now have an extra 4% of moisture in the atmosphere worldwide just in the last 4 decades. And each additional degree sends it up almost another 7%. So when storm events occur, there are these large, very large, historic downpours, and it causes more flooding. And the same increased heat pulls the moisture out of the soil, creating the historic drought in Russia and in many other places around the world. We are seeing these records broken in place after place, region after region, on every single continent. You may have noticed the news that a massive ice island 10 times the size of Manhattan just broke off of Greenland. And you have heard the scientists say that these very high temperatures of late will become far more commonplace as long as temperatures are allowed to continue to increase because of man-made global warming. Despite efforts by skeptics and even some members of the media to mischaracterize these events and to throw doubt on the science, the scientific community is virtually unanimous. Of course, there are always a few skeptics and outliers, but more than 97% of the climate scientists around the world are telling us that the evidence is very clear. The last formal international assessment declared the evidence unequivocal. This is really an extreme situation. And more than that, we also know that the benefits of solving the climate crisis and making a shift to clean energy will reduce our dependence on foreign oil markets dominated in a very unstable region of the world, will create millions of new jobs here in the United States that can be outsourced. This is a challenge that the majority of the American people are ready to undertake.